injuries first of all, probably rather than me ask about them individually. You've got a few, so do you want to just talk through them?
Yeah, well, obviously Cunnington still recovering, but moving in the right direction. Hopefully have him ready for training in probably about a month. Ashley Chambers' injury is troublesome. It's on the soft part of the foot, which is really sore, but he's running. Doesn't feel comfortable with his boots on, and obviously striking the ball, which is a major part of the remit. But so he's still struggling. Harrison Dunk's injury is the most disappointing of all, really, given the way it happened. And it could be a while. Damaged knee ligaments. Doesn't appear to be any damage to cartilage, but we now have to wait for the ligament to heal. And he's going to be, I don't know, he's going to be 6-8 weeks, I would say, before he can play. But Bonner's training for full, and Miller not as serious as we first thought. Obviously played 90 minutes on Tuesday with no reaction. We were in yesterday for recovery, and I think that's about it, if I'm honest. Can't think of anybody else at the minute.
Yeah, Matthew Barnes-Homer missed out on Tuesday. Was that just a little knock?
He's been ill, and you know, it takes a lot out of you, and also he has the other things to contend with is that he's cup tied, and given both scenarios, to play a league game between the two semi-finals and change the team dramatically, I didn't think was the right thing to do, and so just try to keep the group together for that period. But he's back in training and looks a little bit more like himself, and hopefully by next Tuesday he'll be back and ready for selection.
Yeah, is that virus he's been struggling with the same one from a couple of weeks back? He's really not been feeling too good.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. You know, I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who've had it, and obviously when you're a sportsman it hits you a little bit harder.
Let's talk a little bit more about Harrison Dunk then, because he's had a great season, hasn't he? And perhaps in the past he has had injuries that have disrupted his seasons, but this year in the main he's had a really good run of games. He's been a really important player, and inevitably a big loss.
Yeah, it's a big loss. He's the only one that gives us that natural left foot, which is why we brought Mitch Austin back from Lincoln. We have good alternatives there, Donaldson, Gillies, but they play the role differently. So he's going to be a big miss for us. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, and particularly frustrating because he's the type of player that people pay to come along and see. He plays great football, and it's fair to say he was given a bit of treatment, wasn't he, in that Alfreton game? And it sounds as though that didn't exactly help the situation. No,
I mean, personally, I think since the new year we haven't had particularly good protection from the man in the middle. You know, we've put together a group of players that can create and can excite the crowd, and I think people have looked at that and seen that, and they have come in for some treatment. There's no doubt about that.
And just a quick word on Josh Gillies. Wasn't around on Tuesday. Was that just not enough places on the bench?
Well, look, I think the other thing as well is that, you know, the three of them really, Chambers, Barnes-Homer and Gillies. Whilst people think it's easy to make the transition, sometimes in reality it's not, and it can be more difficult when a team is going really well, because it's not as easy to make the same impact as if you come into a team that's struggling and suddenly they start to do well. So it really was a case of, you know, we needed a result on Tuesday night. It was get back to what we know a little bit. It didn't work in the first half, but second half we changed it and went to a shape that was the reason for bringing Gillies and Chambers to the team. And I'm sure that will develop in the right way over the coming weeks. There's no doubt about that.
And I'm sure it's a case really of stating the obvious, but at the start of the season you have pre-season to bed in new players that you sign in January. You kind of have to do it as you're going along.
Yeah, and the more difficult thing is that you know, if we're going to bring in people of the quality that we want, in reality they've probably not been playing at their clubs, and so it's not as easy just to come in and play and get minutes on the pitch when you're striving to win football matches. That's obviously far more easier in pre-season, which is obvious. So it's been a little bit of a balancing act. You can't really replicate on the training ground what the match day brings, and I've got no doubts that they'll all get better as the season progresses. And what we really want come April, May is everybody firing and giving the manager even more headaches in terms of selection.
And I suppose it ties into all of that really, but how would you sum up more generally? I know you've spoken about some of these topics already, but the post-Christmas period and some of the challenges that you face.
Well, I think it will surprise you and everybody to know that our record in 2014 is 4 wins, 4 draws and 2 defeats. Now that sounds nothing like the heady, ridiculous, outrageous first 10 games or the next 10 games, but I would suggest it's nearly as good as everybody else in the league apart from Luton. So, you know, there's a perception out there that isn't reality. The reality is that 3 of those wins have come in cup ties. At Luton, at Eastleigh and at home to Grimsby. 3 really tough games. But that's the schedule that we've put ourselves under. And I think if you look at Grimsby on Tuesday and their results since the turn of the year, they'll be in a very similar situation to us. And very difficult to explain to everybody just what impact other competitions have on league results. Very, very difficult to explain. Because, and the reality is that in a period where points become much more difficult, you cannot keep winning football matches. You know, so if you win a cup tie, it's more difficult to win the next league game, and so it goes on and on and on. So I would say to everybody, you can't have it always. You know, we've started the season wanting to be involved in the major competitions at this level, at this stage of the season, and we are. And as I've said, you know, 4 wins, 4 draws, 2 defeats is probably nothing like people think our record has been since the new year.
Yeah, and inevitably, obviously, when people are coming to games, they want to see the side win all the time. But I guess you do get the feeling that, generally speaking, supporters are pretty pleased with what's going on. And you know, hey, they may have the odd grumble, but they only have to look at the table.
Yeah, like I think there was a lot of hype surrounding the Grimsby game because we'd won 12 in a row, and you know there was a shock. I guess it was a shock to the system that we could actually lose a game at home. Well, hey ho, this is reality. You know, and our home record, even after the last 3 home games, is 12 wins, 1 draw. Sorry, yeah, 12 wins, 1 draw, and 2 defeats. Come on, you know what I mean? You'd have been doing cartwheels if I said to you that was going to be a record at the start of the season. You know, and the other thing that 2014 probably has done is just brought a sense of reality to the whole thing. You know what I mean? We've never said that we are anything other than a team that's going to try and compete for promotion. Never said any more than that at any stage. But I also know, by the way, that whoever wins it will get 100 points. Because that's what it takes. And so we've always had that as our objective. Now whether we could achieve it is another thing, you know. And the teams they get in the playoffs are going to be around 80 points, you know, 80 to 85 points. And we've always felt that we were capable of competing for that. Now that's the way it's proved. I think our away record will end up being a good one, and I think our home record will end up being a good one, but a realistic one.
And one little marker, as it were, from last season, I think 1 more point takes you to matching your tally from last year, which is a good little signpost as to the progress that's been made.
I didn't think we got 59 last year, actually.
I might miscalculate it,
I
but
don't know. But we may have. I don't know. I've not really looked at last year, to be perfectly honest with you. That was a means to a purpose. No, look, we know what our objectives are. You know, we want to get as many points as quickly on the board as we can. We don't want to be looking over our shoulder. You know what I mean? The pack are closing in simply because we've played cup ties. That's it. And at the same time, we found league points a little bit more difficult in the same period. Now, once we get Saturday out of the way, we've got a run of league fixtures, no matter what happens on Saturday, and we've got to get back to being as relentless as we were before Christmas. No doubt about that. We know that. You know, to some extent, get Saturday out of the way will be a little bit of a relief, if I'm honest.
Obviously, it's a different kind of game Saturday because it's two-legged. You've already got a one-goal lead. How does that change the way you approach the match?
I don't think it's. I don't think it changes the approach in any way. In many respects, I think if we'd gone there 2-0 in front, it would have made life a little bit more difficult because players at this level are not used to that type of competition, home and away. And no matter what you say to them, human nature sometimes allows a little bit of complacency or a little bit of negativity to creep in, and you can lose a goal. You can lose a goal early, and suddenly it becomes very difficult to pick it up. Now we've lost that goal, and we've had a week to reflect, and we're going to go into the game 2-1 in front and not 2-0 in front. So, you know, whatever the score was, you've got to try and win both games. But I do think it does refocus the mind that this is a game that we need to go and win. And if we lose a goal early in the game, then the mindset is still exactly the same. So, I think the one-goal advantage probably makes it a 50-50 game. And that's it. I think it was probably 60-40 in their favour before the first game. We've probably drawn it back to 50-50. It's no more than that. It's in the balance.
Do you mention Wembley and the prize that's on offer, the chance to win a trophy, to have that on your CV at this stage, or is it just a case of focusing on this single game?
I don't need to talk about things like that. Players are well aware of what the prize is, you know, and now that we've got to this stage, they want to go there as much as the supporters will. So no, we haven't really talked about that, to be honest.
And you played Grimsby now a few times this season. You've mentioned the away trip there in the league on a few occasions. Very satisfied with that performance, and I guess it's something you can really take inspiration from.
Well, we've said enough about that. You know, let's be honest. Chris Maxwell saved a penalty on the day. You know, in the last 20 minutes, they put us under a lot of pressure. So it's not just the Grimsby away performance. If you look at our away performances and results, you know, as a whole, you know, we've been pretty tough to beat, and we've been pretty solid, and we've been pretty resilient, and we've played some good football. So, you know, playing away from home against whoever, we had to go to Luton and win a replay. Had to go to Eastleigh and win. You know, that wasn't easy. Had to go to St Albans and win. That wasn't easy. You know, so every experience along the way, I think, gives you a little bit more in the bank, as they say. But we're under no illusions. You know, as I've said, this game is in the balance, and either team can still go through.
Yeah, and just to pick up on tough to beat, we've got all the way through to what is it now, February, almost March, and struggling to think really of a game where the opponents haven't really had to earn anything that they've taken off your side. And regardless of the particular results you picked up, when you look back on that record, that must be pretty satisfying.
Well, I think we've set, you know, that was one of our objectives at the start of the season, that if anybody took anything off us, they were going to have to really work for it and earn it. And if we did give anything away, we'd strive as hard as we could to get it back. And I think we've done that. You know, I can look back at the game at Southport, for example, where we didn't defend a corner well in the first 5 minutes, and then spent 85 minutes throwing everything at them to try and get it back. You know, and even Tuesday night, you know, we've come in, we weren't good at all in the first half, and you know, we're able to say at half time, look, lose the game, really having a go, and we did that. And I think that approach has held us in pretty good stead throughout the season.
Cool, great.
Yeah, I was just going to double check with Bird. Is he's staying for a longer period now?
Yeah, I think he's here for another month.
Yeah, and the other, I was just going to check with Sullivan. Is there's no sort of pressure from Portsmouth? They're not. I mean, I suppose they would obviously rather you were playing him, but there's not pressure from them to pick him or
none at all. We've taken him on a half season long. We felt we needed someone with experience in the camp. Circumstances dictate that Will gets his chance. We've been, shall we, shan't we, really, even in the summer before we brought Maxwell with Will. But I think Chris was good for him. I think John is really good for him. And he's progressing. And whilst that's happening, I see no reason to make the change.